I was adopted by a Danish couple. My adopted parents, immigrated from Denmark in 1957. They weren't able to have any children, so they came to Canada. They moved to Sudbury. They adopted my sister in 1962, and they adopted me in 1964. I was about 6 months old when they adopted me. As I grew up in this home, at a very early age, my parents told me all about the fact that I was adopted and shared a lot of the information they had about my biological mother. They told me her name. They told me what my name was when I was born. My name was Wesley Luigi Gilbert. And so from that name, I'm not sure at first, I wasn't sure what nationality that was, but I definitely knew that Luigi was Italian, so I knew I was part Italian. God has, over the last few years, taught me that He not only knows where I live, and He cares about me, and He cares about you, He's also taught me that He's very involved in my life, and has been very involved in my life throughout the years. I want to share my story briefly with you today, just to communicate with you exactly what God has been teaching me here. As I grew up, I never had a desire to look for my biological mother. You may ask why? Well, I guess a few reasons. I was brought into an amazing home. My parents loved me, raised me very well. And also I had a concern over the years, even as I got married and I had children. My children would say, "Why don't you look for your mother?" And I would say, "Well, I really don't want to go down that road. I don't want to open that can of worms." And so I never really made the effort to find my biological mother. Well, 6 years ago, February, I was sitting at home. It was a Saturday night, flipping the channels. I came across a show called W5. Maybe some of you watched it at some point. And the topic that night discussed was there were mothers who were being interviewed. They had children out of wedlock, born in the 60s. Of course, I was born in the 60s. And the discussion focused on the fact that many of these mothers, there had been some pressure put on them to give their children up. They were young. There were some religious reasons. There was pressure religiously. There was socioeconomic reasons. They were young. They didn't have jobs. They were unemployed. Some challenges there. And so that caught my attention because that kind of fit with what I heard about my biological mother. They interviewed one mother. She had a child that was born at the Women's College hospital in Toronto. That really caught my attention. You say, why did that catch my attention? Well, because that's where I knew I was born. She talked about the pressure she felt to give up her child. And I got thinking as I listened to this mother, now mind you, this is just, again, 6 years ago, so she tells the story. I thought, what if my mother, she was young and, away from home, she had no family with her, she got pregnant at a young age at 19. What if they put some pressure on her and she gave me up? And maybe, what if she's looking for me? And so that got me thinking that maybe I should make the effort to look for my mother. So I downloaded some government forms. I sent them in to the government. 1 month later, I received a letter from the government saying that they had registered my name, and they said if they found a match with my mother that they would let me know. Well, it was about a month later after that. So February, I watched W5, I sent the letter. April, I get this letter. I receive another letter 2 days after Mother's Day. I was home for lunch. I was sitting in the kitchen having lunch, and somebody came to the door, and it was actually someone from the government. I had to sign for registered mail. I opened up the letter, and lo and behold, it was my mother. My mother's name, my mother's phone number, my mother's address, all the information. Obviously, the government had found a match between me and my mother, and so now I had all the information where I could actually find my mother. And so What did I do? Well, I guess the question is, what would you do? I was 55 years of age, I'd never spoken to my mother, what would you do? Well, the first thing I did was I picked up the phone and I called her, not really putting a lot of thought into what I was going to say once I got her on the phone. So I phoned the number, a man answered the phone. I assumed it was my mother's husband. So I said to the man, can I speak to Audrey? That was the name of my mother, Audrey. And he said to me, no, she's busy right now. She's not available. And so I said to him, when would she be available? Now, suddenly the tone of his voice changed. My mother's from Newfoundland, and so she married a guy that was from Newfoundland, and suddenly his voice changed, and he said in a very stern voice, wondering who this guy was that was phoning, looking for his wife. Now, who might you be? That's what he said. And I thought, whoa, what have I got myself into here? What should I say now? I mean, this is the husband. A lot of questions running through my mind. What if this guy doesn't know about me? What if she never told him that she got pregnant and had a child and later on met this guy? So I said, I went right at it. I said, it's not going to hurt anything. I went right at it. I said, did your wife ever tell you that when she was a little bit younger, in her teens, and she actually had a child? What a question to ask a guy you'd never met. And the guy paused, and his tone changed quite a bit. And he said, yes, actually, she talks about that child all the time. And so it was quiet for a few seconds. And I said to him, well, I am that child. I'm her son. And he said, oh my goodness, you need to talk to her. Well, later that day, I talked to my mother. It was I can't even express the feelings I had within my heart. What's it like? I'm 55 years of age and I hear my mother's voice for the very first time. It just blew me away. That was my mother. In discussion, I learned, obviously she was from Newfoundland, married a Newfoundland man. And in our discussion, she told me she had been looking for me for over 30 years. And she told me that she had prayed every night before she went to bed, that she would meet me before she died. My mother, a few years before we met, had a very serious stroke. And her husband's name is Harry. Her husband told me this story that she was, for about 2 years, she wasn't able to communicate very well. She didn't know who she was. She didn't know who he was, didn't know who the family members were that would visit her. But she would always ask for her son. She was still looking for her son. That still was quite a focus in her mind. And so that had consumed her really all of her life. The thought that maybe one day I'd meet my son before I die. So again, I spoke to her my first time, and I had the privilege a few months after talking to her of flying with my wife to Newfoundland. Of course, meeting her for the very first time, that was pretty mind-boggling to walk off the plane, to walk into the area where the luggage was, and to see my mother for the very first time. She was sitting there in a wheelchair. And of course, when I saw her, we embraced and hugged and kissed and cried for 5 or 10 minutes. Well, we've had the privilege over the years of getting to know one another. We've had some good discussions. There's kind of some interesting things I want to share with you about our discussions. I asked her one day, I said, her mother, my grandmother, died when she was very young. Her mother died when she was 33 years of age, and my mother was about 14 years of age when her mother died. And I asked her, what's the name of your mother? And she said, well, my mother's name was Hannah. That blew me away. You say, why? Well, I have 3 children. And I said to my mother, today you have not only gained you're a son and a daughter-in-law, you gain 3 grandchildren, because I have 3 kids. My oldest son, I have 2 sons and a daughter. My oldest son, his name is Ian. My youngest son, his name is Owen. And my middle child is a girl, and I'll let you guess what her name is actually Hannah. Actually the same name that her mom had. And so that was pretty mind-boggling. I learned that her father's name was Wesley, and so that's kind of where I got my name, Wesley Luigi Gilbert. So my grandfather was Wesley, my biological father was Luigi, and of course she was from Newfoundland. I learned that she had married a lobster fisherman. If you like lobster, well, I have to say I like lobster, and I've eaten a lot of lobster. He has a business. He goes out fishing for lobster with his traps. He catches about 300 to 400 pounds a day. And yes, I had a lobster fest a few times at their house. In fact, he's quite a fisherman. Over the years, in visiting, we've eaten cod, lots of cod, halibut, mackerel, and scallops. He catches it all fresh, and we enjoy a good feed, of course. We have, in the last 6 years, my wife and I brought my kids along a few times. We visited Newfoundland 14 times in 6 years, and every time we bring a cooler and we take back 50 pounds of fish. And so I've been enjoying a lot of benefits of getting to know my mother and getting to know Newfoundland and enjoying the food in Newfoundland. There's so many other blessings that come with this discovery, but I would just say I want to thank God for opening this door. I want to thank God for showing me, as I share with you, that God doesn't only know my address, that God is not only concerned about every detail of my life and my family's life, but God is very involved in my life, and God has been very involved throughout the years. And as I look back, I see his hand in so many ways. This is one example I share with you. And I know that that's not only true for me, but that's true for every person that's listening today. You may wonder, does God know my address? Does God care about me? You may be going through circumstances and challenges and disappointments. You may be praying and wondering where God is. Well, I want you to know where God is. He's right with you. And he knows your address. He cares about you. And if you'll let him, just allow him to work in your life, you'll see how involved he is in your life, in making you and building you and strengthening you, and obviously wanting to live within your life and change you. And so I would encourage you to look to him and trust him and realize that he's very close to you.